should be, you know, and many people have views about what a hospital looked like many years ago, and they see that in their minds. But this project is going to be something that will serve the whole population and meet a wide section of needs, I think, as it's been described. So I think it's really, really good provision and important in the wider context that we've discussed earlier in our meeting. So just wanted to say thanks for getting us to this point, Stuart.
Mind if I just come back? I have my own skill set, my own discrete skill set. We can't do it unless we act as a team, and we've got a brilliant team.
Yeah.
And I get support from Russell, Tamina, Paolo in respect of this particular project. So it's a credit to everybody who's been working through that we're actually having this conversation.
Great. Diolch yn iawn. Something to add, Carol, before I bring Gareth in and wedyn Priya?
Yeah, if we're doing thanks, I just want to recognise the efforts of the Centre IHC, Libby Ryan Davis, who's no longer with us, Gareth Evans, and Steph O'Donnell, who's the project manager, because David, you may remember this was one of the first meetings we went to with the Devonshire Council leader, who said we're really frustrated because this has been 10 or even more years in the making. So we agreed we would take a fresh look at it, and really pleased with all of the efforts over that time. There will be people who want something different, but we've taken a really careful look at what the need really is. And a lot of people, most people, want to be a step closer to home and need that bit of help. So I'm particularly pleased to have seen the clinical model come through. I've had a number of discussions with the clinical team that this is part of an integrated community offer, not more and more hospital beds. And I know that is quite a psyche to move. But this, you know, this is in the heart of a community that I think will benefit significantly. And then we'll be back on the main building and the conundrum that is quite an aged building and how we utilise that. Just one final thing. I went to the Christmas concert in the Royal Alex. If you ever get an invite, it is definitely something to go to. Andrew was there with me, and just such local support for that facility, the importance it has in the hearts and minds of people, that really came across. And so when we just offered some words of support to the Royal Alex, I think there was a round of applause, and that signified the support in the local community. And a lot of that interaction and engagement has happened through this process. So I always want to thank anyone who's been part of engaging with us to help to get to this point. So diolch.
Great. Yeah, there's a huge history to the building and the site and people's attachment, you know, for a whole host of reasons. And I think what this project does is it recognises that, but it also a provision for the future, not the past. The future has to be different to the past, and this, I think, this project captures that. So that's great. Diolch yn iawn I bawb. Paolo, as Gareth, wel, ie, dyn ni wedi gorffen yr eitem. So cwestiynau bobl rwan. Gareth gynta, wedyn Rhian.
Yeah, it's not really a question. I just wanted to say how supportive I am of the Royal Alex. I think, you know, Will is a really difficult, troubled place, community. It's got lots of community strength, but it's also, you know, is some of the most deprived wards in Wales. I think putting an investment there is really important. I was going to, but I will echo your tribute, because I think Stuart comes in with this imagination about, well, how can we do this differently? So, and I'm very excited, as you know, about the MIAU and 12 hours a day, 7 days a week with diagnostics on site, the X-ray. So it's really, really good news. Just two small points about what can't be done at this stage. And one is obviously to say, you know, that I hope that we can keep our eye on the phase 2 ball while, you know, asking you to do many things at once. And funnily enough, I haven't said this to Stuart because it was raised just shows that ministers are sometimes on the ball, wasn't it? Was that the Minister for Mental Health, who we had a regular meeting with yesterday, was stressing her concern about the CAMS accommodation, which is right at the top of the old building. So obviously there's an issue there, but I also thought, and this is the thing to apologise, because I hadn't said this to Stuart, is that if we're moving some things out of the old building into the new building, whether there's any possibility, particularly at least the basement where the X-ray is, isn't under the roof which leaks. So maybe there's some possibility for a bit of shuffling in the building. And the other thing, I just, because it's a shout out really, was it notes as well that we aren't going to have the IV suite, but there's really excellent sort of bottom up initiative of an IV suite in Denby, and I just want to make sure that we keep that and give it the support, because I think that is recognised in the business case. I think it's right, but also, you should build on strengths. The fact that that's been worked up by a few really enthusiastic people as staff in Denby Hospital. Let's just sort of build on that success. So, but thank you. It's nice to have things to be really positive about.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, just two things with the bed, the beds that will be there. Can I just clarify the catchment area? Because in the paper, I think it's mentioned of 18 and 19, and it won't be restricted purely to people from those postcodes, will it? Because it can't be. So I just wanted to clarify, because we are sort of selling it as being specifically for Frill and that area because of the levels of deprivation and need and so on. But it's not going to be, you don't have to have that passport to be able to use the facility. No. So that was one thing. And then my other thing was on the previous paper, and I just wanted to check, it mentions there, one of the things that slipped from Q1 to Q2 was the review of outsourcing and insourcing contracting. And since Q2 has nearly come to an end, I just wonder, how did we get on with it? Or when will you be telling us how you got on with it?
Two questions. I don't know if Paula wants to give the...
I'll just come back on that one. So 25th of September, we've got a few days until the end of Q2. Our process is kicking in to get all the reporting through, and then we will bring that through the governance, and it will come to the next board, but it will arrive at PPHP en route to that prior to them.
And do you have a prediction how it's going to look? Is it going to be good reports for us to see?
I predict the report will be good to see. I won't make a prediction on that specific.
Diplomatic call.
I think you've been quoting the late President Reagan when he said, "I never make predictions, especially about the future." So, Carol, on
Shall I pick up the catchment? Yeah. So you raise a really important point, because if we restrict too hard certain facilities for certain populations, they won't be utilised sufficiently. And of course, this is resources for all of the population. But you're also right that this is really targeted at Rill and the surrounding areas. But there are a couple of things really. So the minor injury and ailment unit, we do believe that there's quite a demand from the Rill population themselves for those services. So I think they will largely be utilised by those residents, but people may well travel to it as well, and then on the sort of care closer to home step down, we will look to fully utilise that service. So, but largely it's Conwy and Denbighshire residents. And that will help people to leave the District General Hospital, get home a bit quicker. One of the things we've talked about with all of these key programmes is the evaluation stage, is to bring back formal evaluation reports and learning, because we're probably not going to get it right first time. We'll have to adjust the models and things like that. So I fully anticipate we'll need to adjust criteria and those sorts of things.
Great. Claire, and then we'll wrap up on this item.
Diolch, and apologies to Paolo, because this is a point about the annual delivery plan update, and I probably should have, but it's only occurred to me in the meeting. So it kind of picks up on where Rhian was around objectives which have moved from being delivered in Q1 to Q2. I'm only 5 days away from the end. And yet we're being asked within the paper to approve the kind of change. And I'm just thinking, well, what have we said we weren't going to? They weren't delivered in Q1 anyway. So I guess it's a question around, can we just have a look at what the governance process ought to be where objectives slip? Because in some ways we're being presented with a fait accompli. They haven't been delivered in Q1. So I think it's almost that we just need to note that some things have slipped and understand what the assurance is about them being delivered during the course of either the next quarter or the one after. And then just one of my regular points, some of the ones that are red are reliant on external organisations to work with us to deliver them. And I think we are still sometimes too optimistic about how we're able to move things on when we are heavily reliant on working with other people outside of the organisation where we have less levers to pull. And so I don't want teams to feel disappointed that we're, marking our homework as red. So it's just a plea, I think, for when we're looking at some of those work programmes as we move forward, that we do allow some leeway, especially where we're working with external organisations. But good to see the way the report's developing, and I think it's helpful to not only see the reasons for delays, but to have a bit more information on the things that have been delivered as well, because it brings some of those to life. So, diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr. Unrhyw un arall? Sorry, Billy.
One thing I didn't see in the paper was about the Gareth mentioned before, the alternative to admission initiative is in modular units transport. And I didn't see that alternative accommodation is going to be provided somewhere.
I don't think that building's affected, is it? It's there.
No.
No, it's not fair.
It's not like I was talking about the CAMS team.
Yes.
But the alternative, which is really good, is in that sort of what in the old days called a terrapin unit.
Yeah.
But that's not.
So I'm pretty sure the only building we're demolishing on the site is the old estates building in the corner to make way for the energy centre.
Okay.
Yeah.
Diolch yn fawr. And Pam's revision of what we're going to approve, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, it was just the recommendations of the report, obviously, of the board to endorse the business case, but as Paolo alerted earlier, it will be subject to the consideration of the commercial pace in the private board. So if we'll tweak that recommendation, which would be subject to the board approval in the private board, and obviously we'll report that formally anyway back through to the next board, as we always do in terms of any private matters. So I just wanted to, for the record,
Reit, diolch yn iawn. Pawb yn hapus I gefnogi y cynllun busnes yna, y rhan yma, byddwn ni'n trafod ymhellach yn sesiwn breifat oherwydd obligiadau masnachol. Pawb yn hapus I dderbyn yr adroddiadau eraill. Diolch yn iawn. Diolch am y gefnogaeth a'r gwaith yna. Diolch yn iawn ti Paolo am yr arweiniad. Mlaen i'r eitem nesaf, 25, 172, y teitl sydd yn thema eitha cyson y dyddiau yma ar cyfieithu Cymraeg sylfaeni ar gyfer y dyfodol, Foundations for the Future, and a report from yourself, Carol, and I think there's a presentation which you will go through swiftly, I'm sure.
Very quickly.
Just to bring us up to date about the progress of this work, and maybe just for those who haven't followed this as closely as board members have, just an explanation actually, what is it and what's its purpose and what it's going to achieve.
Great, diolch. I will try to learn the Welsh. It looks quite complex, but I'll give it a go for the next time I'm presenting on this. So I'm just going to talk, whoever's got the slides, just Philippa, lovely, or just to keep move the slides on. So yeah, a very sort of high level, reasonably swift a progress report on the major change programme relating to Foundations for the Future, and those programmes come through the main board itself. And just reminding, absolutely right, Chair, what is this programme about? So we're going to very quick overview of what the programme is, the progress, outline the timetable for the structures element in particular, because colleagues are very focused on that, and the recommendation really to discuss the progress and note the timeframes. So what is this programme about? It's to help us to better meet the needs of the people of North Wales through improving the effectiveness of the organisation, and really making this organisation really effective will deliver on so many fronts. We've talked about urgent emergency care today. We've touched on primary and community care, substance misuse, whatever the service is. Our task is to establish a really effective organisation. We took a discover, design, deliver approach. Discovery was completed in November, and we're in design. We're quite a way through design, coming towards the tail end of that. I won't go through the next two slides particularly, but a quick reminder, there were 7 themes that came out of the discovery report, and they talked about the operating model work that was undertaken a couple of years ago, really focused on structures without some of the wider elements being able to be fully implemented. Clarity of roles, equity, this postcode lottery, this inconsistency that we talk about, the importance of interprofessional team working, and the value of all team members. Resources, layers and bureaucracy. I think if you're a bit of a geek as I am in organisational development, bureaucracies have their place, but we can overdo it from time to time. So we do need to have a look at that. There are lots of layers, and that makes us inefficient. Really thinking about how change happens, lots of feedback around our ability to make change happen in the right way, both in terms of how we might change things internally, but how we change the NHS's offer for the local population to better meet their needs. So that strategic element that we've just touched on. So the overarching operating model design, 5 pillars, and we've structured the programme around that. And we've taken a continuous engagement approach, so focusing on open dialogue. So there's not been big set pieces about this consultation, that consultation, although we will be consulting. We've had ongoing discussions, workshops, meetings, one-to-one discussions, chats, and design work being commissioned by subject matter experts. And we've followed an evidence-based methodology. There's a slide that gives the overview of, well, what are we really trying to achieve across those 5 key areas and our objectives. And we will be measuring the benefits of this programme in a really clear way. We've honed them down from 30 plus now to a handful of benefits that we will be tracking through. Some of the design perspectives really reflect some of the discovery, actually, and reducing the gap between senior managers and the shop floor, so getting closer to the action, a clear direction from executive and board, and actually just a quick reflection. I was in the planned care workshop about 6-8 weeks ago, and the colleagues who'd collected there said to me, Carol, we want you to tell us what to do, which I smiled at. But what I take from that is really there are times to be quite directive, and we've got to choose those moments where we as a board are quite directive. And the discussion that we just had on urgent and emergency care, we've been very clear. We need consistent approaches that improve outcomes and experience. So I think that's been an important message. Decision making, who can decide what, change with preparation, how services are configured, roles, corporate functions, governance and reporting. Pam will be delighted about that. And then Paolo will be very pleased to see that planning and strategy came out as one of the really big themes in terms of how we look forward to the future. I won't go into the high level all the products, but I'm just going to whiz through because I'm hoping that just a very quick sort of overview here will tie a number of strands together that we discussed. So the first work stream is on strategy. And there are three big things that we're doing under strategy: strategic intent, the 10-year strategy and the clinical services plan. And in terms of helping us with our planning maturity, a revised integrated planning framework will be considered by the board in November of this year. And the Planning, Population Health and Partnerships Committee is getting a lot of mention today, is overseeing that work stream. The work stream on culture has been well underway since, I think, Jason, September 23, if I look back. And the board has led the culture change programme, values and behaviours framework and team working. So we're making significant progress now with the culture change work, and a report is due back here in November. And the People and Culture Committee under David's leadership oversee that work. The work stream on people, Angela very kindly is leading this. We've taking shared leadership across this programme. This is really about investing in our people, our leadership and development. Workforce planning has been an area where we have not had great maturity. We've made some investment, more will need to come through, and utilising Health Education Improvement Wales's work. Talent management and succession planning, and then building knowledge and skills for people within the organisation. So investing in our own colleagues here within the organisation. And again, people and culture oversee that. Processes, we probably hear quite a lot of feedback from colleagues in the organisation about some of these areas, which is why it looks like it's got quite a lot of priority focus. So 7 key areas, although QMS is being led by clinical executives. So Pam, I don't steal the thunder about some of the reports coming later, but yourself and Russ working on scheme of reservation and delegation, and you're looking at decision-making framework, risk management, etc. And then finally, structures. Teresa, I don't know whether you picked the long straw or the short straw, but working very closely with Fionn Johnston. And I must say, Fionn and George and that small team working really hard on this area. This is the one that grabs the most focus, of course. So how do we design structures that can work? There is no perfect structure under the sun. So there will always be some trade-offs. We're really thinking about remits, roles and reporting. Exec portfolio for REMCOM, we'll be discussing that in October. And in terms of the structures themselves, high-level design is complete, and we're in detailed design now and during October and November in readiness for a proposal being brought forward. And there's multiple committees that refers to. And then finally, just to take us back, a very whistle-stop overview of the programme. I think David's committee really has got the sort of a lion's share of this oversight. So I think we were a regular item at that committee. So just to discuss the progress and to note some of the timeframes, particularly around the structures work stream, because that's the most intensive part of this programme at the moment. My thanks to executive and very senior colleagues on this table and elsewhere for their leadership that they're showing on this work, and they may wish to comment on their areas. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr, Carol. Am hynny unrhyw gwestiynau, unrhyw sylwadau gan unrhyw un? Mae'r bwrdd yn cael adroddiadau son ar y gwaith yma gan Carol a fel oedd Carol yn sôn hefyd, mae'r pwyllgor efo'r gorolwg na'n dydi dyfed o'r cynnydd.
Gareth, just an observation really. I mean, first of all, thank you very much. And I presume obviously the slides will be updated, won't they, on the papers. I just wanted the observation was really good. I'm absolutely supportive of moving to be a high autonomy, higher accountability organisation. I just think we need to recognise it's quite a big change, isn't it?
Quite a big change, a very big change.
Yeah.
Culturally, but with systems and processes as well, but culturally, a very big change.
Angela.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to be supporting the people stream. I think it's really important that we make sure we wrap our arms around the people. So we've got our new PADR, a performance appraisal process that we're developing. We've got the work on how we can make sure that people have got the right skills, the right competencies to enable them to do the best job. And I think that the organisation is ready for this, that we don't just need a structural change. We just don't need a cultural change. We need the whole wraparound. And I think workforce planning is integral to what we need to do for the future.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Rhyw gwestiwn sylw arall? Dyfed?
Jyst sylw sydyn mewn ffordd o ran, mae hwn yn cyffwrdd â pawb o fewn y sefydliad. Dio ddim yn rhywbeth sy'n mynd i dim switch ydi hwn. Bydd o ddim yn, da ni'n pwysio'r botwm a dyna mae o di newid, mae'n mynd i gymryd amser, mae'n bwysig fel sy'n digwydd bod ni'n cefnogi staff, cadw nhw yn y lŵp fel petai, bod nhw'n gwybod beth sy'n digwydd, o hefyd gwybod beth sy'n ddim yn digwydd, chos beth sy'n aml yn gallu digwydd pan mae yna newid, ydy pan mae yna gaps fel petai, mae pobl yn llenwi'r gaps yna hefo bob math o bethau, ond mae hwnna'n lot mwy na just y strwythyr. Mae o yn mynd ar draws y sefydliad i gyd, ond na eto eisiau diolch i bawb, mae Carol di sôn, pawb sy'n gysylltiedig efo sy'n gyrru hwn ymlaen. Mae'n braf cael ei weld yn symud bob tro yn y pwyllgor. Diolch.
Diolch. Iawn. Cwestiynau sylw pellach. Austin Gross.
Yeah, so I think just building on that structure, so I think it's ensuring we've got clarity on those roles and responsibilities as we define that, and then that will lead to that effectively that accountability culture as well. So with that devolution, it's really clear as to how linear responsibility falls through the organisation as well. So having that clarity, I think, is really important as we move forward.
Diolch yn iawn. Teresa.
Dim ond sylw byr. Adlewyrchu ar sylw Carol o'n i. Mae Ffion wedi bod yn wych oherwydd mae hi a George a'r tima wedi bod allan yn cwrdd hefo aelodau'r staff. A gan fod ni wedi bod yn sôn yn gynharach am pwysigrwydd gwrando i'r poblogaeth ac un staff, mae hynna wedi bod yn rhan allweddol o'r gwaith dyn hyn, ond mae yna fwy i wneud, ond mae wedi bod i dros 30 o grwpiau hyd y gwn i. Mae wedi siarad a da ni wedi gwrando yn astyd, mae rhaid dweud. Wedyn, eisiau diolch i'r staff pawb sydd wedi rhoi i barn i fewn, a fydd yn dal i rhoi i barn wrth i ni symud ymlaen.
Ie. Diolch am y sylw yna, sylw bwysig iawn, ac mae hwn yn ymwneud â staff ni, dydy, a cael staff ni mewn lle gallwn ni gynnig gwasanaethau gorau posib ar gyfer ein pobl. Felly, diolch am ysgolfa ni hynny. Pam yn apus i dderbyn y droddiad, ysgolch hwnna.
To receive the report, please. Thanking for the work and the comments. So on now to the next item, and the next section to do with integrated performance. And it's item 25/173 is the Chair's Assurance Report, Quality, Safety and Experience Committee. And Caroline chairs this committee. So I'm going to turn to Caroline. Thank you. In the last meeting, Chris chaired, of course, asking you to transfer the reins to Chris.
You stepped in Caroline's absence.
Yeah, stepped into the breach whilst our esteemed chair welcomed in a new phase of her life as a nine for her and a family. It's very exciting. The paper's there and has been read, I'm sure. A couple of points to simply highlight. We heard about the importance of play workers, and there was a full discussion on how outside partners and I suppose associated therapies or additional therapies are there to support our service users and patients and the positive impact that they have, and perhaps engagement from third sectors as well. There was a full review and deep dive of the challenge services to which we're grateful to Paolo and Tamina that put that together. That was very helpful, and I think we spent quite a bit of time on that. And I think maybe drawing out some positives, I've touched on it previously, that the work that's been done around complaints, etc., by Angela and team. Whilst it's important we pick up those things that we need to improve, we should also celebrate those positives. And I think a final point on that, and a specific example, we heard, as we've heard in other arenas, about a finding in the coroner's court of negligence but no prevention of future death report, and that means that something went wrong, and that we need to acknowledge that. But and that is tragic. That being said, the fact that there was no learning to be highlighted from the prevention of future death, shows that the learning that we've done to that point was accepted and indeed was positive. So to draw out those positives there. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any, but all relatively straightforward.
Thank you, and thank you for chairing that committee. Any questions or comments for Chris? If not, and we reiterate the congratulations to Caroline as a grandmother and to the family as well. Thank you, Chris. And on now to the next item. In the same area, I'm just checking my place on the agenda. It's a report for improving quality, and Angela will present this report. And it's a standard item which comes to the board every meeting.
The report for this meeting identifies some of the things that have happened over the last couple of months and the position that we're in. So some key highlighting points is our national reported incident position. You'll note our continued progress on that, and the fact that we are the best in Wales for the turnaround of those incidents and the reporting of them nationally. We have had one never event for wrong site surgery in June, but there was no significant harm around that case. Chris has already identified around the improving complaints position. Just to note, we are looking at around a 20-day turnaround on average now against the 30-day target. And as of yesterday, we only had 28 overdue complaints compared to the high 400s last year. So I think that's a real progress for us. Patient experience, we are still collecting our Civica data, and you'll note that we've done a little bit of a deep dive into women's services and to mental health to give a bit more of a flavour, and the plan is for us to continue to do that with different areas to bring that information back going forward. We have identified that 87.51% of patients identified they were treated with dignity. Obviously, we want 100%, but that's an improvement on previous months. And 90%, above 90% were communicated in their preferred language, which again is a positive and an improvement. From an infection prevention perspective, we had 13 outbreaks in July, which is up from 11, but we only had one full ward closure during that period, and the teams worked really hard to make sure that they mitigated the risks of closure of beds and then stopping the flow through the organisation. Positive progress in reducing Clostridium difficile and E. coli infections. And we are looking at making sure our strategic priorities include the disinfection, isolation capacity and staff training. We've had some good uptake of staff training. We're now reviewing across the sites with the support of Stuart around the isolation capacity and making sure that we're able to move patients fast appropriately into a side room to stop that spread of infection and to make sure that there's deep cleaning happening across the organisation. Just identify around the quality management system. I know Paolo mentioned it as part of the annual plan. We're now working towards the implementation phase, and I've just, while we've been in the meeting, had the information back about how we're going to roll that forward. All of the meetings have been put in with the IHCs and divisions to allow them to then cascade the first assessments out. And then Chris has already mentioned the no prevention of future death notices. Obviously, the learning that we had was immediate from that case. We've put it into practice, and we have had positive feedback in recent inspections around the care in that area. So that is really important for us. And then the good position around overdue learning from events reports. You'll note in the report we've had a little bit of a spike. That was on our resubmissions, and we are working with Welsh Risk Pool around the consistency Matt and the team are taking back to Welsh Risk Pool. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that report. Any questions or comments from this report, which comes to us on a regular basis? A very important one to the board meetings. Caroline first and then Claire. I just wanted to draw attention to the major improvements, of course, that Angela has just summarised, and Chris has mentioned the QSC papers as well. And I just wanted to draw board's attention to the improvements that have been in this clinical part of the paper, clinical effectiveness, nice guidelines and mortality. And those are elements which the QSC have concentrated on in a workshop about 3 months ago. And leads into the improvements that we have seen in this area, and the way that this report now presents information in a much better way than it was going back a year. So I know Shri isn't with us today, but it's important that we note the important work that he's done, and he's based a good foundation for these elements and to be able to be worked on. Claire.
Really good to see how things have moved on and progressed. Really good to see how much better we are now at dealing with any complaints and issues. What would be helpful as we move forward, I think, is to see, so there's a breakdown of the types of complaints, but we can't see how that compares to the last time it's reported to us. And it would be good to be able to start to track whether we're now getting less complaints in a particular field, and perhaps we're stuck in another field and need to do more work in that area. So I think it would be really helpful for us to see that breakdown. And if now the numbers are far more manageable, that'd be easier for us to see and start to look at the trends. And then the other one I wanted to highlight as a positive was that around clinical coding. That was such a big challenge for us for a long while, and it's really good to see that we're much more on top of that than we were. So
yeah. Yeah, just no question.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Anything to say briefly, Angela?
Just to say, we are going to be looking at our next iteration of this report. So we've got a piece of work that the execs are doing around the reporting from the integrated performance and the quality to allow us to be consistently identifying the trends across, and then we'll be able to show you the deep dive work that's happening. Some of the thematic reviews I think we've undertaken recently are really interesting and give us some real opportunity for development. So I'm happy that we can provide that. Obviously, we want to make sure the report isn't 70 pages long, but we'll be able to give an opportunity to go in more depth in some of the areas going forward.
Carol.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Carol.
Just to comment, to see that comment, and she said it, that's great. We took that challenge from the last meeting. We've got a session, I think, in execs on the 18th of October, where we'll cover some of that off. I think increasingly our focus will be on, are we implementing best practice, and are we implementing that systematically across the organisation, so that we have got the same great offer in all parts of the region. And there's some it's really, Caroline, talking to your comment about clinical effectiveness, nice guidance, best in class, what are our outcomes, and really started to drive that. And Clara will certainly help us with that as well. There was a focus on women's in the report, which was really good. And I had the opportunity to spend a couple of hours with a couple who had a very difficult outcome and experience with us. And they are very keen to be part of creating something that is better for the future. So whilst we talk about complaints and numbers and letters and all of that, I think getting underneath in a really detailed way, and that will help. It was in the area of maternity, and that's going to be very important. We've got maternity voices or and that sort of thing coming through. So, you know, I want to thank that couple who shared such, you know, difficult experience with me and the director of midwifery and women's, and we'll be taking that forward. So I do feel it's moved significantly from where we were a couple of years ago.
Very good, thank you. And are we therefore happy to receive that report? Thank you, Angela, and thank you for the work. Everybody happy? Thank you. Coming now to the Chair's Assurance Report for the Performance, Finance and Information Governance Committee. And then on to the Integrated Performance Report. Gareth, first of all.
Just a couple of things. I'm sure people read the report from me to highlight. Say be commenting on a couple of things later on. So I think one of the things that we were really mindful of, and I know Audit Committee saw it as well, was that the Audit Wales report on planned care, which was not, I don't think, overly critical, but it was quite critical. And I think we will later see it in the context of what they said about other health boards. And I think what we were told was it's probably the most critical. And one of the key issues there was, have we got the balance right between the sort of insourcing and outsourcing and actually addressing the fundamental problems? And that for me, and I think for the committee, is a really important question. We are going to have at our next meeting, we're going to have a focus session on particularly on theatre optimisation, which is something which, you know, we've highlighted as an issue. When you look at the performance data, including the latest one, we're not really seeing any change there. So I really think the committee wants to get to grips with that. The second thing is a very, very brief comment on, I think you were quite outspoken at the last committee, Chair, if I may say so, or perhaps the last board meeting about the format of this report. So work is ongoing, and a number of the independent members have had a really useful discussion, I think, with Ed as the who takes the lead on this in the absence now of the director. You know, I'm hoping with the work that's ongoing with Carol that, you know, we will get something that people feel is more fit for purpose.
Good. Outspoken. More.
If you said something like, I don't understand any of this, or something to the words there. That was in Welsh, but
no, it was the same message in right. Unrhyw cwestiwn I Gareth?
Any questions for Gareth? Rhian?
I had a rant about it as well.
Yeah.
So you know, you're not alone.
No man or woman is an island. Sorry.
Gareth, I noticed you made a point about the board objectives not being smart. I mean, that has come up in audit committee in relation to, I think it was a Wales audit report. And I just wondered if this was something that we were picking up.
Yeah, Paolo and I have got a meeting with Dave Harris, our head of internal audit, to discuss this, because it's a really interesting point, that I think it was in the context of looking at the very good work that's been done by Pam's team, Nesta in particular, on risk, but saying that although we made a lot of progress with the BAF, the Business Assurance Framework, that the underlying problem was that our objectives weren't smart. So yeah, we're going to have I think, just to say, he's not here today, but I know Carol feels the same, that, you know, both Audit Wales and our internal audit really have some very valuable insights, and both of them come from a position of wanting to support us. So I think it really is, we need to draw as much as we can out of their expertise. So we will be doing that.
Thank you.
Do you want to say something, Pam?
So that's not a new issue, Gareth, and I'd like to be involved in that conversation, if I may, with Dave. So a board assurance framework is, how can the board assure itself that it's meeting its objectives? And in the structured, so in just good practice, you would have to, you would need to be really clear about what those objectives are, and then how can the board assure that it's delivering those? So in the structured assessment last year, and I think I did raise it at the time, was that the objectives would need to be smarter. So it's still an outstanding issue from previous structured assessment, and it will always be until we're in the strategy space, because what you should have is your organisational strategy, which sets your vision, and then that's how you measure. So I personally don't think until you get to the new strategy place, we may never be able in a position to resolve that issue. But I do think it's an important point, because then that ensures that you've got the difference between what is a board assurance framework versus corporate best practices. So if that was a bit of a governance, but I do think it's an important point, but I'm happy I'd like to be involved in some of that, because it's not a new issue, it's just that, okay. I think once we've got the strategy, we know what the strategic direction, and then the back will really come into it.
And Paolo would welcome that involvement, I'm sure, so all good.
Anyone else? Is everybody happy to receive Gareth's report? And thank you very much for the committee's work as well. On now to the next item, 25/176, the integrated performance report. And Carol, over to you to present.
Thanks very much. And just to preface some of the detail in here is to say that we do have dates for the informal exec. We'll be joining with the performance team. I've already met the performance team. They have ideas and suggestions to bring to the table. And I think we're going to then look for a wider IMs and exec sessions. So I'm not going to absolutely know when you'll get the new format. Depends on how much change and the advice of the team. But certainly we're coming to the tail end of the way in which we present things in this way. I am really keen that we have a set of presentation on how well we're doing as an organisation that is understandable and digestible by people that we serve. So we may need to think about what those formats actually look like with that in mind. I am going to draw on, I'm afraid, the very common and popular areas just to draw attention to. Quality, access and activity, people and organisational development. And then there is a separate report on finance, but I wasn't going to draw out, in a lot of detail, each of those areas. I think on quality, we've just received the improving quality reports, quite a lot of data in there. We are looking to try to combine that for the reason Claire pointed out in her question, which is what's the movement over time, and some of those other clinical effectiveness indicators as well starting to come through. So that will form part of that. I want to just recognise Claire's comment about coding and pull out the efforts of the coding team, in particular Catherine Lang, because we'd discussed this issue around the exec table probably about 18 months ago, and we really got a plan. And we've had to stick with that plan, and now it's really coming to fruition. So that's been great to see come through. On access and activity, of course, this is our biggest challenge. We've already discussed urgent and emergency care, and as Gareth put it earlier, whilst we can see some small signs of improvement, it's not systematic and sustained, and it's not to the level that we will need for our population. I won't go through the particular detail, but there will be a relentless focus on handover 45, so that's that ambulance handover into our department. but we do want to see that progress across the system. So when we had that discussion earlier, 4 or 5 key indicators, we'll draw those out and be clear about those. Planned care access is improving on planned care, despite us finding it very challenging to deliver the numbers of particularly people who are waiting over 104 weeks in line with our ambition we set out in the IMTP. It is a source of significant concern for us, and I know for the government. And we've had some additional input and contribution from the government. There are some things that we will be changing as a result of our own internal additional oversight and focus on delivery. This is a very challenging agenda this year, because not only are we focusing on longest waiting patients, the government also expects us to treat in the region of 4,600 additional patients for cataracts, and also to see an additional 60,000 patients for their outpatient appointment. The logistics of an additional 60,000, I can't stress enough about the pressure that's put on the service. The diagnostics as well, the expectation is that no one waits over 8 weeks for their diagnostic. We are, in true openness and transparency, unlikely to achieve that. We will move, I'm sure, from circa 14,000. We're trying to get to between 4,000 and 5,000. We think that that is probably the reasonable, most likely outcome, but we are pushing hard on that. And then just to, for a moment, not forget some of the really key indicators that are a focus around mental health and neurodiversity. Sustained progress, I think, sustained progress in mental health, despite a lot of referrals coming through. So to commend on that. CAMS improvements are being seen on trajectory, which is really good. But we still have a particular challenge in relation to assessments for children and young people, in particular, notwithstanding adults, who require a neurodiversity assessment. There is a plan in place for that. I was just going to just cover off very quickly. A number of our people and OD indicators are actually very positive, and Jason was able to share those with the government in a meeting earlier this week. But I wondered, David, if I stop there and invite either questions or additional contributions from executives.
Thank you very much. So, if anyone would like to add anything before opening up to questions?
Will be illuminating for us. No need to repeat what's in the report, of course, but I think the line now is the opportunity. Russell.
Yeah, Chair, and if I may take the opportunity, so certainly from our operational clinical teams, we have really raised our game and supported delivery around that 104 provision. And so just to recognise that position, we are now maintaining our existing weights and actually slightly reducing those through our internal capacity. And we do need to develop and improve our contractual delivery, which is the thing that's the additionality that will give us the results that we need. And we know that's a shortfall, and we know that we're looking to address that and move that back into our contract scheme, which I think will end up with the result that we need. So it's just to add that additional context, if I may.
Yeah, thank you very much for underlining that. There is some recovery work to be done to get things back on track. That we need to ensure that pretty soon. So diolch yn fawr for underlining that. Right, cwestiynau gan unrhyw un arall.
Questions from anyone else? Gareth, and then Rhian, and then Claire.
Well, thanks. That was really clear. I think really helpful. I've got one big issue to just as we echo really, and perhaps we'll discuss that more in the private session. But it is this feeling that the additional ask that's come from the government about the 200,000, is that the right number, outpatients across Wales? And I say this, you know, I'll hold my hands up as chair of PFI, that perhaps we haven't been clear enough in saying how that is potentially a big confounding factor to delivering on what we were told was our absolute priority of the 104 weeks. And I don't think I really, it's when you put those numbers, 60,000 and the flow through. So yeah, I think that's worth estimating, really emphasising. And perhaps it's not too late. It's not about back covering, it's a backside covering, but perhaps being clear to the government that we are trying to juggle these different demands, and some of which came rather out of left field, albeit now 6 months ago. And I've just got two really small questions, but I will raise them because they're areas that we don't necessarily often pay a lot of attention to, I think. One is, and they're in the details, I don't necessarily know you can answer this straight away. So one is about dentistry, because admittedly, there's an even bigger time lag in the reporting on this, because obviously we're gathering data from dental contractors, so it's only 1 month's data, but it shows in April we only delivered 3.3% of the value of the contract, which, and I know that I've been told, and I've got great faith in some of the people we've got temporarily working in this area, that they were very confident we'd use more of our GDS contract this year than last year. So I just wanted to just check that out. And the other thing, which, and again, I don't want to be sounding critical, I'm looking at you, Angela, because it's about falls, is that I know we've had a lot of attention on that because of the HSC, but the falls numbers, and I don't want to sound saying that I know there are always going to be issues about people falling, but the numbers look like pretty stubbornly the same. So I just wondered whether there's any comments on that. Sorry, they're two very detailed questions, but I think
fine. Okay, so hold that. We'll gather some questions from others.
It wasn't really a question. I welcome the fact that this report is going to develop into something else. And, I think the underlying theme is, don't just tell us the what, but we need to know the why and what's being done about it and how. I think that should be the baseline when we're working for a new report.
Yeah, really good point, important point. Claire, Tina, Seth?
Doug, what's in my mind at the moment is we've got extra resources and extra pressure and extra expectations around both planned care and all the diagnostics and everything that leads toward that. And maybe it's because I'm not on QSE, so maybe it's a question for the chair of QSE, who has said today that we've been doing deep dives of some of the most challenged services. Because actually what we've got to be doing right now, isn't it, is accelerated progress with extra resource, whilst also transforming the way we do things, so that when the resource isn't here next year, we're confident that we'll be able to maintain where we are and improve it still further as time moves on. And so when I look at this report in isolation, I kind of can't see some of that. What I see is just how we're trying to use extra money, or we're trying to progress things with the expectations that are upon us. And maybe at some point we need perhaps just a summary level paper, so that at board level we can see, if you like, both sets of actions moving along together.
Sorry. Thank you, Claire, for your point. It just reminded me of something that flitted across when I was reading. So obviously, our future depends on innovation. That's central to us achieving the goals that we set ourselves and Welsh Government sets us, as well as what our local population expects. But I did remember an internal audit report on innovation that did raise the issue of the lack of how we evaluate or record steps we take and the results we get from innovation input. So I just wanted to raise that, because obviously, as Claire just raised there, planned care, all of this is hugely significant. And our future does depend on every sector, but example, planned care, if we don't achieve some innovative practice, we won't maintain. So I just wanted to raise that as something that is worth looking at for the future, so that we're clear innovation actions actually does result in a difference. Thank you.
No, really good point. Right, we will.
Great, I'm happy to. Angela's going to pick one up.
If you can take, we will wrap this item up then. Thank you.
Great. And thank you for the contributions on that. Gareth, on dental, I'm particularly interested in dental, and I know we're counting units of dental activity still at the moment, so UDAs. I've asked colleagues to provide us with a more detailed report on UDAs across the years, because the detailed report I saw about 18 months ago saw a complete drop-off, obviously pandemic and lack of recovery, and there were some real hotspot population areas. Now, we've put about between 4-6 million into dental contracts, and I want to see whether we've fully recovered those and what the trajectory is. So I think we'll be improving dental reporting. Angela will pick up the falls. I think that the impact, by the way, you're absolutely right, the 60,000, all of that, and there's some real reflection for us on that. We didn't have the administration that we needed to do this. It is really significant. So that's been a big challenge. Got Rhian's comments about the why what. Completely agree.
Yeah.
On the transforming the way we do things, so Gareth alluded in his report about theatre utilisation. That's work stream 4 of the planned care programme. So the guys will be very, very happy to, I think, come and have a conversation. This is why the major change programmes are so important, because otherwise we're just living today over and over and over again, and we're not moving things forward. I've been really encouraged by the level of commitment and input on the work streams on planned care. I chair it myself, so I'm quite close to it. A new model for preoperative assessment being tested. It's the second cycle of testing. It'll be across the organisation. A new model for assessing older people who may well be candidates for surgery. Again, test that out. Does it work? And then adopt across. So we're getting some of that through. But I want to go as quick as I can on that. So a summary level paper where we connect today's performance with the changes that we're making feels quite important. And then I made a comment earlier about evaluation. I couldn't agree more. And in particular, innovation is either something we invent ourselves or we adopt from elsewhere and adapt. So we've got to get much better at spread and scale. And that's this. How are we going to do it here in North Wales, and how are we going to roll that out? I mentioned in evaluation for key programmes. I think evaluation skills is something we need to develop more of. So thanks for raising it.
And Angela, on the falls in particular?
So from a falls perspective, they are fairly stubborn. But we'll note that the numbers of falls patients who have had falls at home attending A&E is one of our biggest areas. So we bring patients into a hospital setting where potentially at home they use their furniture to navigate. They know their home. They could probably walk around it in the dark. We bring them into a hospital setting where there's wide spaces of open wards where they have to go to the bathrooms. So what we do is make sure that we do robust falls assessments, and that is the work that following the HSE we undertook to make sure the falls assessments were undertaken, that they were, if they'd had another fall, they had a full multidisciplinary review around the medication, around, eyesight, all those kind of things to make sure we were where we needed to be. And we have weekly panels where the teams will look at every single fall that happens in that area, and they'll identify whether it's avoidable or unavoidable. And an unavoidable fall would be because there's been no lapses in care, so no lapses in risk assessments, no lapses in overview and things like that. The issue we've got is we need to make sure people are not deconditioned, and we need to rehabilitate people. And if you sit them in a chair and don't let them move, then we've got a position where we're going to have hundreds more nursing homes needed because somebody's not going to go back home again. So it's a really, really fine balance. But I think I'm really happy we've seen a reduction in falls with harm and the different levels of harm that there may be. And I wonder whether as a next reporting period, we could look at the falls with harm and the levels that maybe could give us that assurance that the numbers might still be the same. But, I fell down the stairs last year. Everybody has falls. We just need to make sure how we're managing them and supporting it.
I found that really helpful and reassuring, but yes, it would be interesting to see that.
And to look at them. I know this is sort of getting to some of the detail, but it's to do with improvement, isn't it? That's the key thing, and an issue requires improvement. Jane, what's your contribution?
Where we need to start to try and link data as well to actually give a picture, because Angela was talking about the Falls Hospital, but also that it's one of the biggest reasons people end up in ED. We also know it's also one of the biggest reasons why people end up in care homes, etc. It's also hugely predictable. So the work that is also part that we discussed earlier as part of the 6 care goals, where around community falls, actually joining that up to see how all of that is actually delivering change, and is that linking to sort of things like falls in, are we seeing a falling ambulance from care homes, and from that would then start to give a really good picture. And that's, I think, how do we get that added value from data? So it's not just about we present an indicator, but we actually use this to help us see what's really happening across pathways, which then we can get a sense of what is that delivering in terms of outcomes for people.
Great. Diolch yn iawn. Pawb yn hapus I
Thank you very much. Is everybody happy to receive that report? And thanks for the work. Number of steps which require to be taken to ensure appropriate improvement across a number of areas. So we look forward to seeing progress.
The key word that we latch on to. So we will look for progress. So right, ymlaen i'r item nesaf.
So on to the next item. It's 25/177. We're a bit late, running behind time. So Russ, your financial report.
Item of this session. We're looking for a succinct report. Diolch yn iawn.
Yes, I'll try and do a very succinct report if I may. I know we will be discussing this again anyway in private session. So, very challenging climate across the whole of Wales, actually. A lot of health boards are really struggling financially. 4 health boards, of course, put deficit plans in. They're being helped as we speak to improve those positions. I know the other health boards are struggling. All health boards are currently reporting deficit year to date. So this is a challenging environment that we're operating within. We've got about a £13.6 million deficit year to date. We do have some additional potential pressures as well. So the Welsh risk pool is a good example of where resources are unfortunately not sufficient to cover the costs, and health boards are being asked to accommodate those costs within their models. So that is driving an increased risk to us as well as savings shortfalls. And we've got some running cost pressures as well out of area mental health. We've got capacity areas open. That's driving around a £40 million risk net of some mitigations we have to delivery of our outturn. What we've done, we've raised that through the governance of the health board, and of course we've had through integrated performance executive delivery groups some wider discussions with the leadership forums of the organisation. We're looking at making sure we identify our savings. We've moved quite progressively through the year, so 33.2 now, 6.8 short of the 40 million. I think that's really good progress. Clearly, the lessons here are to get that in advance of commencement of the year, not during the year. But Welsh Government are looking for assurances, and of course we are, to make sure we deliver our savings ask. In addition, we're targeting a 1% reduction in costs. That will give us a further £20 million savings. We've also asked what are the other options that we can put together that may or may not save us financial return. £40 million sounds a lot of resource, but of course, as we always say, 2.5 billion, 200 million a month over is what we spend. So in that context, 1% efficiency across where organisations sit. And managers have already been working that through, and we'll discuss some of those options later, of course. We've also put forward some fairly interesting reference cost data, which indicates activity versus cost reduction. I think that'll be good to include within the PFIG agenda as we go forward, just to give some visibility of cost movement where we haven't necessarily seen activity increase, and give some indication of where there is productivity opportunity. It does highlight some areas, particularly within the health board, for targeting in terms of potential for opportunity. And of course, that means we can get into allocative efficiency, so not salami slicing savings across areas that have already performed well. So there's a lot of work going on in the background around how we manage that process. Clearly, we are still forecasting hitting our break even. We do have £82 million non-recurrently in our position. That ultimately is conditional on attainment of our plan. We have received correspondence from Welsh Government reaffirming that position as well. So there is a risk. Will they enact it is a good question, but there is a risk to that resource being withdrawn from the organisation as we go into 26-27 if we're unable to close that gap. So there's a real positive incentive for us to make sure we save that money now. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, if I may, Chair, very quickly, just on the capital programme. So myself and Stuart's team's working really hard, but we have an extensive programme this year. It will reach around £56 million once we receive the contingency allocation from Llandudno. And currently we've got about £5 million spent. So we're trying to de-risk that. We don't want to get to the end of the year in the last month and find ourselves in difficulty again. So again, the teams are working really hard together to try and get that profile down. It'd probably be worth building that through PFIG as well, so that visibility is there around that spend profile. And I'll pause there if I may, Chair, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Russ, for that report. A lot of work is being done. And we're at the end of September, so I have about 6 months, I believe, until the end of the financial year. So about 6 months for us to create the necessary savings to reach where we want to reach. So any comments or questions? Urtha first.
Blue sky, and forgive me if it's a bit of a stupid question, but I just wondered, are we going to get to a point where we can identify savings from innovation and transformation? Will that happen at any point? Is it possible? Can it be shown in the account? I don't know. I just said,
No. Well, any activity that produces efficiency should be highlighted, shouldn't it?
I'm happy to
go on.
So absolutely, that's the Value and Sustainability Programme. It is all about capturing improvement. One of the areas that we're really struggling with in terms of evidencing value, and it's quite stark within the reports, is around clinical variation. And if we start to see productivity gains through the programme work streams that are currently in place, you'll start to see improvement in utilisation of theatres. You'll start to see changing girth models. There'll start to be more efficient practice. That will reduce premium working. It will also reduce internal capacity that we're generating as well, waiting list initiatives. So all of that resource freed up can be used to support provision of a financial outcome, but clearly also, and the big incentive around the improvement programme is to invest further into the resources so we can enhance the offering to our local population. So the savings ask is by area, by budget manager. The value sustainability is the vehicle to drive improvement and deliver savings as a byproduct of improvement, and then create more resource to invest within the organisation. So that programme in itself is the one that's going to get there. And it's a really good question, because I think clinical variation is one we haven't seen the benefits of yet, and we absolutely can see some significant benefits.
just to add on to that, I can, that, as you know, I mentioned yesterday, I met a group of staff at Nantgwrtheuer, and they felt that the improvements were not visible. And I think that kind of message, if we can say through innovation for both staff and our citizens in North Wales, you know, through innovation and transformation, the health board has been able to reinvest. So I just think it would be useful if we could pull it out and make it really visible.
Good point. And Pam has reminded me that the major change programmes that we're looking at, value and sustainability, will have a focus in the next board meeting, I think. And we're also reminded by some of the narrative around this and the report is that if you look at the activity, the investment, it doesn't always produce increased productivity. That's the situation. So the focus on you've just talked about is really, really important, because if we put in more money into an area and start producing more outcomes or outputs, then there must be something wrong, you know? So it's really important we have that focus. Paolo, ti isio ychwanegu rwbeth?
I would like to add anything. Yes, please.
As an executive, actually, there's the whole piece around the value and sustainability and clinical variation and the productivity measures and the planned care. But actually, we were having this conversation in relation to urgent and emergency care. Carol talked about it earlier, that there's been a massive amount of investment in that area.
Yes.
And really, it's treating the symptom, and it's a cost of failure. So if we improve that system because the flow isn't working, then actually we don't need people chasing progress, and we don't need extra care on corridors, and we don't need all these things because the whole thing's working. So you get the nirvana of improving the service and saving money because you've removed the waste. So you know, central principle of our improvement and innovation transformation.
Really good point. Yeah, really important point. Rhywun arall efo rwbeth I ddeud?
Has anyone else got anything else to say? And if not, everybody happy to receive that report. It's the finance report from Russell, and thank you for the work. And to keep going, I think, is the message to ensure that we can attain the target because it's of key importance. But we'll have a report in our next board meeting on the subject, on the value and sustainability report.
And allow enough time for the discussion, I think, because it's really, really important topic. Common hapus, felly.
So is everybody happy, therefore, to receive that report? And thank you for the work. And now we come to the end of this part of the meeting. It's 24 minutes past 1. We will reconvene. Well, it's 25 minutes past 1 now, so we'll reconvene in 25 minutes, if that's all right.
13:50. That's 25 minutes. Aim for 20, and we will start on the dot 25. Okay. Croeso nôl aton ni yn
Welcome back to us to this afternoon session. Now we continue with the agenda for the board meeting. And welcome back if you are rejoining us, and welcome back if you're joining us for the afternoon session alone. We're on the item 25/178 on the agenda. It's the Chair's Assurance Report, and the first section on governance, risk and assurance. And the first is the Audit Committee, and Urtha, as the Vice Chair, has stepped in on a temporary basis, and thank you for that. Urtha, if you'd like to say anything about your report, please. Thank you.
I want to start the comment really by giving thanks to both Internal Audit and Audit Wales, because we would be absolutely lost as an organisation without their not the word in Welsh, but not in English, sorry, their deep dive into what we're doing in Wales and how we're going on, and the governors, all of those aspects. We would be really lost without their guidance on improvement and picking up the holes that we may not have quite seen. So we actually read and discussed 8 internal audit reports last time we met, and the planned care Wales-wide audit report from Audit Wales. So there was a lot to discuss, but there's comments obviously in the paper that's been shared with you, but I also wanted to raise the fact that the planned care audit was actually seen by QSE and PFIG and audit. So in terms of reassuring on triangulation and scrutiny, I think that's such a good example of how we're all working together, keeping different aspects on track. And we've discussed planned care a lot. So that's kind of the 4th element. Today we've discussed planned care a lot. That's the 4th element in scrutinising reports and developing a pathway to go ahead well with improvement. So just to reassure the board and the public on that one. The reports were all received well, and the members that attended that day, we discussed in depth the different comments that internal audit and external audit raised. There were some further questions which will be picked up again in the next audit committee. And that's another example of how we are triangulating and maintaining scrutiny, and also some discussion this afternoon. So I don't know if anybody wants to ask any questions in particular about the last session. They're very welcome to.
Diolch yn iawn, Urtha.
Thank you very much, Urtha. So any questions or comments on that report? Is everybody happy to receive the report? Thank you very much for the committee's work and Urtha's work chairing that. Next item, therefore, 25/179, Governance and Accountability Framework. Pam, over to Pam.
So this is a joint report between me and Russ. I'll take us through the report, and collectively me and Russ will be able to answer any questions. So this is the governance accountability framework for the health board. Within that, it includes a review of the scheme of delegation, as well as the changes to the standard financial instructions, which have been recently issued to take account of the procurement changes to the Procurement Act. So just in terms of assurance, there's been quite a lot of work done to reformat, try to make it more straightforward, simple, picking up some of the points which Carol mentioned in her presentation on Foundations of the Future. The complexity and the understanding about decision making in the health board is definitely a key theme which has been come through. So we have made quite a bit of changes which we took through audit committee, and obviously sought views of internal and external audit as part of that. So I just want to say that it has been through due consideration. This is part of a wider suite of work and training and support, and which will be rolling out across the organisation in terms of how we operate. So I think there's a couple of things I just wanted to highlight, and before handing over to get any comments or if Russ wishes to make any areas. So
we've talked as a board in terms of whether we can delegate more through to the executive. And I think hopefully over the last couple of months, you started to see that alignment in terms of some of that. We also talked to the board a couple of weeks ago, actually, around how we can improve that balance between strategic and not. So there's certain things we just can't do because they're matters which are reserved for the board, which cannot be delegated. There are a whole range of other matters which probably might need a bit of a review, I think, from a Welsh Government perspective, that requires the Health Board to seek permission from Welsh Government as part of certain contracts over £1 million. So we can only do what we can do within the rules that we're current. So I think I just wanted to set that instead, really. So I suppose the paper hopefully is self-explanatory, which illustrates the changes. We've reformatted the scheme of delegation to make it more in a tabular form. We've taken away what was called the old tables A and B, because that is just really complicated for people to understand. I've introduced a set of financial principles in terms of any delegation, and to make that really, really clear. If you're a budget holder, these are the principles that you will need to follow in terms of delegation. So again, this is the clarity that people are seeking. We have introduced, to make it much clearer, what I've called a tier system, which is consistent with other health boards. We're not doing anything out to make it clear of actually what tier of decision making would you hold, and this will align to further work where we do around roles, profiles, so people are really, really clear in terms of their delegations. There were some comments just at Audit Committee, just aligning the delegations to the Oracle approvers, because if you remember, I think the Oracle approvers had the Chief Exec and Russ or Carol's approval. So we've just realigned some of that. So we just wanted to give some assurance because that was a specific element there. And then we've just added, made it really, really clear in terms of some of the changes to how the Executive Committee will operate. I think I had a conversation with Gareth around primary care contracts, because currently the terms of reference per the Performance Committee requires all contracts above primary care, and what we've said is actually above the limits of the Chief Executive. Just trying to make it straightforward, to take a little bit of complexity out. There's still quite a bit of work for us to do in this area. So I think what I've suggested in the paper, because we're now looking at the next tier under the Executive Committee and how that is going to work. And obviously we'll need to review again when we've got foundations for the future, because actually, it's understanding how all those elements work. There's further work to do just in terms of the decision making and around the complex care panel, which we've put in place as a team. So some strengthening in terms of some of that. I think I'm going to just ask Russ if he's got any comments, just in case I've answered any of the financial bits wrong. And happy then to take any questions, Russ.
So Chair, so no, I think that was a really comprehensive update. We've walked hand in hand with this document. It is more of a structure that I'm used to. It removes that tabular format, so it does now flow, I believe, a lot more, and it is consistent with other health boards as well. So we are constrained, of course, in terms of that Welsh Government threshold of the £1 million, which has been referred to, and that's reflected in the delegations and how we've arrived at those delegations through the committee structures. It's been through the executive for endorsement. Of course, it's been supported through Audit Committee to present before you today. So looking for it to be endorsed, really. Thank you, Chair.
Felly, no question.
Thank you very much. So any questions or comments? Gareth.
Yeah, it's me as well. I do think we were having a discussion about this. So we should just raise again with the Welsh Government the level of delegation from them, because when it reminds me your little footnote that we've added to the minutes, like the level of materiality, and this was a few years ago, it's more now, £20 million. and yet for every million, I mean, it's a lot of money, but it doesn't make sense, does it? So, and it doesn't make sense because it bogs them down in looking at stuff.
Well,
so, anyway.
It should be revised because the financial context has moved, so I think it would be good practice to revise it. Any organisation in government should do that. It's an important point.
And the other 2 points are, this may sound naive, but I welcome the lot of clarity I think there was about the point of requisition being the point when control is issued, because I know that should be self-evident, but it certainly, from what I can understand from the past, wasn't the case. And I know. So I think that's really important. And the final point was one that again, Ham and I have sort of discussed, and Russell and I have discussed, is that while we can't do anything about contracts, and I mean, I know you've got some very good thoughts about how we handle them, but with business cases, I find it a bit frustrating that business cases that have to come to the board at the moment come through PFIG and then come to the board. And you very kindly, Chair, sort of take my view that if I say, well, we've looked at it, it's all fine, that you take that. And I'm just wondering whether it is possible to have a system where they come either to the board delegates to PFIG, that if the PFIG is first, if you know what I mean, that it does it and it's reported to the board, or it comes to the board rather than all having to come through, because that will speed things up a little bit. And we often, our procurement processes are horrendously long anyway. So that was just a proposal.
Can I just prompt maybe a wider discussion about the whole business case and the way it's done and the, what is it? Ceffyl adrol, how does that translate? Is it cart and horse in the right order and all the rest of it? I think there's a wider discussion.
Oh yeah, but I'm just talking about the big business cases that have to go through.
But I think that's definitely part of it. So is that possible at some stage?
We have had a discussion at executive about business case development and business planning, service planning. People get quite mixed up and they're different views depending on where we've grown up as to what we need a business case for and what we don't. So there's a piece of work for us to do anyway, and we've had that discussion. So we could bring that
process around it.
into an informal board meeting.
That would be helpful. Peter wants to make a contribution, and I know Tamina does. I'll bring Russ in before the end as well. Peter.
I just wanted to say I applaud the simplicity of it. I think it's nice and straightforward, and it's easier for people to stick to things that are straightforward. So I think that it's a real good step. And I think in terms of what you said about business cases, trying to come up with something similar that lays it out quite clearly will make a step forward. And just to go back into history, it was when LHBs were formed in this format, taking over the secondary care. The trusts didn't used to be subject to the £1 million, but the LHBs did, the old LHBs.
That's
when they transferred it, they didn't take that away because the minister at the time was quite supportive of making sure that spend was closely controlled. That's what I'm led to believe. That's going back 15 years. So
that's really
maybe it is
that makes sense.
I think there's a national discussion here, isn't there? That should be prompted maybe by chief execs and chairs and and engaging with government. I think so. That's interesting insight, isn't it? Tamina.
It was just a very small point on page 11. You refer to IHCs, and I just wondered whether this has got a bit of kind of livability into the future. We describe it something like an operational division or service.
Good point. Russ.
Chair. So I think mine was just more around discussions on business planning process, making that so it's absolutely tied back into our IMTP for visibility across the wider organisation, and then underpinning of the IMT as we develop the strategies. So not clinical strategy, but also estates infrastructure strategies. And once we've got those development plans in place, everything should line back up through that as we're developing our cases to give us some reference point. So it's just to make that connection.
And Pam, to wrap up on this then.
No, just really say really helpful comments. This is part of a bigger suite of work. You heard Carol talk about decision-making framework, so there's on top of that, so we'll be bringing that back. And really just want to say thanks to Philippa and to Neil Williams in Russ's team. It's been quite an intensive amount of work, so I just wanted to recognise the hard work there. So
Great. Diolch yn iawn. Pam yn hapus
Thank you very
felly.
much. So everybody's happy therefore to agree and receive the report. Thank you. Next item, 25-180. Another report presented by Pam, the Corporate Governance Report.
What is self-explanatory? There's just one or two items I just really wanted to draw to the board's attention rather than the normal updates in terms of the approved clinicians and affix and seal, as well as the chair's action. There was a further chair's action that was undertaken, I believe last week, but due to the timing, I'll bring that back to ratification next time, Chair. And then I just really wanted to highlight all the committees have undergone their self-assessments and annual reports. The annual reports are in the supporting pack for noting, they're not for the board to, but just in terms of a line of sight, where there's identified improvements, we'll build that into a governance improvement plan, which is one of the priorities in the annual delivery plan. So just really wanted to give some assurance there, and also just to ratify the response to the Health Art consultation, which we had an informal, and Chair, you signed that off before we submitted it in time. I was happy to seek any questions from members of the board.
Great. Diolch yn iawn. Unrhyw
Thank you very much.
cwestiwn?
So any comments or questions? If not, so could we please thank Pam for the work, a lot of progress, a lot of developments. And thank you to Pam and the whole team for the work they do. So is everybody happy to receive the report and to ratify the response to the Health Art consultation and to ratify the approvals of approved clinicians and doctors? Thank you. So moving on now to next item 25/181, we move to the Chair's Assurance Report, People and Culture Committee. The committee chair, who isn't here because he's had to go to an Anglesey Council meeting, so deputising for Dyfed is Billy. To say anything about the report?
We met on the 14th of August. Unfortunately, I was in Germany, but with the magic of television, I've been able to watch the recording. The committee reviewed the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Act as it is applying to public services in Wales, and we approved the Strengthening Social Partnership report, which has gone on to Welsh Government. I must say that we're talking to Jan Tomlinson, the chair of staff side. We are held as an exemplar of social partnership working within public sector in Wales. That's really good.
Yeah.
And I think we work really well together with our workforce colleagues.
Yeah. Diolch yn iawn, Billy. That's
thank you very much, Billy.
Really good to hear, and confirms the really crucial relationship that we all have across the health board. Whatever it says on the door, you know, we are all one team. So that's really good to hear. Diolch yn iawn. Unrhyw cwestiwn sylw?
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? Arthur?
Billy was saying there, I was at a social partnership meeting hosted by the TUC, and Betsy was mentioned for the social partnership working. So just a second.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else? Is everybody happy to receive that report presented by Billy? Thank you for doing so on behalf of the committee, the People and Culture Committee. Thank you. So moving on to Sections 25/182 annual reports. And there's a summary here of several reports and details in another situation. So, Pam.
So I think we'll go to each of the exec leads for this. So
Great.
Stuart's the first one.
Yeah, so there was a health and safety report. It's just got the cover sheet, so I'm assuming it's gone out in the bigger bundle.
It's in the additional papers, yeah.
It's an appendix, the report itself. So here we've got the sort of introductory sheet, and then for each of them, actually, the full report features in the appendix.
There's nothing specifically to add, other than really just the signpost. I think generally you're going to be seeing a slight shift in our approach to reporting health and safety and the governance applied to it. And that's beginning to sort of come back into feedback from the HSE and how we're addressing matters. So, but no specific points to raise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that work, Stuart.
Just a very small point. I flicked through the detailed report, and I just wanted to note my concern, which is it's not our fault, obviously, but the high level of violence and against staff. Yeah. And I remember commenting on that last year, and I know we're not alone in this, but I just think for what it's worth, I think we need to express our solidarity with our staff and do whatever we can, as I'm sure we are doing, to protect them. But
and that was highlighted recently in the media, wasn't it, in fact? So yeah, really, really important. Stuart.
Yeah, just to come back. So I would agree, and they need our support. I think it's something we can I can work with Helen to see whether there's a renewed zero tolerance communication message we can begin to put out to posters on our front door, just to reinforce that message that there is no acceptable level.
Yeah. It was quite interesting. I happened to go, that I do often, but through passport control, not too far away, and the first thing you saw was a big sign saying "Thank you for respecting our staff." Yeah. Not saying "Don't do this, don't do the other," but actually "Thank you for respecting our staff." And I thought there was something sort of psychological in that. I think
behavioural science.
Behavioural science, as you say. Yeah, but no, great. That's really, really important. Right, line in Nessa,
so
Pam,
on to the next item. Teresa representing this. So I'd like to take the opportunity to raise about 4 points about. You've got 2 reports in one. You've got the monitoring report because the board is expected to discuss that document, and I'm grateful that it's here. And we've also given an update on the More Than Words work for you as well. And if you're a champion for the Welsh language, Chair, and we're grateful to you and the board for all your support. But 4 short points, if I may mention, in terms of the standards. We feel that the health board is doing progress, and when I look at the IHTs in our community, see that they are moving forward very well with the work. Work is taking place with the Welsh team, identifying the gaps, and we try to put systems in place so that that work moves forward positively. That's important for us. And the hidden shopper, secret shopper, so continues. And you see that there's nearly 1,000 staff members by now who have gained access to Welsh training. Many of you around the table are obtaining training and progress. That was your word today, Chair. So progress, an increase of 29%. I think that's fantastic. Just try to discuss the promotion work. The campaign of using the Welsh language is going from strength to strength every year. And work on children's ward, you saw that on the S4C TV programme. And I think the story of the patient that we have to discuss yes, being positive, and is still being used across Wales by now. And fourthly, if I may mention the external agreements, we have external agreements now with the Welsh team, 5th year with the Centre for Learning Welsh, and we have an SMA with the Aneirin Bevan Health Board as well. I think we're the only board in that situation. So that's something for us to mention praise for. So those are 4 small points, and thanks to the board and the Welsh team and everyone who's learning the language and using whatever Welsh they have. That's excellent. That's the aim at all times, is to give people the opportunity to learn or to improve their Welsh language and then to use it. And we want to give a boost to everyone to do whatever's possible with the amount of Welsh they have. So thank you very much for that guidance and for that work. Any questions for Teresa? If not,
No, sorry. No. I jumped ahead, sorry.
No. Any question?
no, any questions? If not, Pam, next section.
Okay. Thank you. Jason, anything to add to the report, please?
Only to say that hopefully the report demonstrates that we're trying to make sure that we're doing more than just our statutory duty. And obviously, the report demonstrates that we're meeting the requirements that Welsh Government set out for us in relation to a number of plans. For example, the anti-racist Wales plan, the LGBTQI action plan, but also as well the other point of data as well that we also need to provide both to the UK government and to the Welsh Government. Hopefully you'll see in the report that year 1 was very much around trying to build the level of engagement with the equality team, with the different networks across North Wales, and trying to ensure that we were seen as a partner. But both the report and all of the 30 actions that are noted in here have been agreed with our external partners. We have an external meeting with different organisations, which include organisations like Age Concern, Shelter, and other interested parties on a bi-monthly basis, and they help inform the agenda to make sure that we're picking up details both in relation to patients but also staff as well, because this is about patients and staff really. So hopefully the report gives a bit of an understanding of what's being done, but obviously the year ahead there's some key priorities that we've got from the different data points around reducing the inequalities really, particularly from ethnic minority staff at certain grades within the organisation, improving our data, trying to close some of the points in relation to the gender pay gap, and also as well, trying to ensure that we have got appropriate training and intervention in place to support people to move at different points of their career, regardless of any of their protected characteristics. So hopefully the report just gives you a flavour of what's being done. Still lots of work to do, okay, and next year's report will hopefully have a much more strategic theme. This year's one was a much more narrative theme, but that was quite deliberate because we knew that we needed to be able to build confidence and trust within our communities. And as Duff had described this morning as well, Kerry, who is our head of the equality team, has been quite visible, and also as well trying to ensure that even in very small communities, Betty feels connected, and we're trying to operate at North Wales level, but also local level. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, Jason. Unrhyw
Thank you very much, Jason. Very useful. Any questions or comments regarding that report, please? If not, on to the next 2 reports. Angela is presenting these, I think.
You then for the next 2, please.
So the annual Duty of Candour report is presented. This is the second time that we've presented this annual report. The duty came into force in April 2023, where we need to identify how many times we've triggered the duty of candour for moderate and above harm, and how we are progressing. So this is the detail that's in the report. If I could just let colleagues know that during our development of the integrated concerns policy, we have our daily hub now. So all of those incidents are actually discussed at the daily hub, and that is a prompt to make sure that we are applying duty of candour consistently. And then the cases that come through to the executive integrated concerns oversight panel on a Tuesday morning. We then ask around the cases, discuss what's happened, and then make sure that formal duty of candour has been applied. So I think we've got robust processes in place, and this is to highlight what we're doing.
Do we go on to the next
Yeah,
one and then we get
absolutely.
questions? Yeah.
So the next one is our annual Putting Things Right report. Again, this is the second report that we've presented to the board. I must say that both of these reports have been through Quality and Safety Experience Committee and the Exec Committee for review. This identifies the number of incidents that we've had, where they've been reported, any themes and trends that we may have seen, what improvement work has been undertaken to make sure we're addressing these issues, and then identifies some of the information that I actually put in the quality report, to be honest, on a monthly basis, but summarises it for the year. So I think it's very self-explanatory.
Okay, diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much. So any questions or comments on both of those reports? If not, well, Pam, thank you very much for presenting that item and asking us as a board, therefore, to receive and approve and ratify the annual reports. Thank you. A lot of work is being done. A lot of good work is being done here. It's worth noting. So thank you very much to everyone involved. So moving on now. 25183 Committee and Advisory Group Chairs Reports. Next item. So my request here at all times is, if a chair of one of these groups has anything to raise or to add, this is the opportunity. The reports have reached us, but if anyone would like to say anything in addition, now you can do so now.
It was your first meeting, wasn't it, Peter, of the stakeholder reference group, as I mentioned earlier, and I know you set a lot of work in train as a result of that, which is really exciting. And sure, if Helen was here, she'd also agree with that. So looking forward to developments with the stakeholder reference group.
Our focus, Chair, was very much about trying to get the group to communicate messages to the group in a structured way, but also to try and get more feedback, because whilst we have group representatives, if you like, it's them looking at their wider constituencies and making sure that we're sharing the message and getting the feedback, because the whole point of a reference group should be to make sure it's good two-way communication, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, no, really good. So we're looking forward to the developments.
Anyone else with anything to say? So if not, everybody happy to receive those reports, and thank you very much. So we come now to the final item, date of the next meeting, which is Thursday, 27th of November 2025. And that meeting will be held in Bangor.
The reason we are going to Bangor is because Benny Cymru are rehearsing their pantomime. Now, I know that will prompt a lot of response, but it's a good excuse to go to the great city, the great university city of Bangor, of course, and to ensure that
I'm sure that we'll be in Neuadd Reichel, possibly, but we will confirm all the details with you.
Remind ourselves this week a couple of things worth reflecting on. First of all, today is World Pharmacist Day, or World Pharmacy Day, that we were reminded of, so that's really good. And the 22nd of September, it's the 21st today, but the 22nd of September 1934 was the date of the Gresford disaster. So we've been reflecting on that this week, and it affected a lot of communities in the northeast of Wales in particular, and still does. And it reminds us, doesn't it, about what the price of coal was and the debt that many of the mining communities in the north of East of Wales paid and have indeed continued to pay over a very long period. So some things to reflect on there this week, and I'm then sure there has been a whole host of other things as well. A cynnig gloi,
just before we end, just in case that someone has any comments or anything to say about the meeting, anything we could improve on or do differently next time, we will try to continue to improve as a board at all times.
What we should be doing differently, including members of the public, how we can make this meeting more purposeful within the confines we have of a need to report on standard items. But I'm hoping that we focused our time on one or two of the big issues that are at the forefront of the public mind. I'm hoping we managed to do that today.
If anyone has any comments regarding the meeting.
Now, or if you want to email anything, obviously that's acceptable too. No,
if not, everybody is happy. So we'll move on therefore to say that's the end of the meeting, and can we thank everyone for their contributions, and can we thank Laurie for the translation service, excellent as usual. Thanks to Laura and Philippa and the team for preparing. We've been here in Llandudno for the majority of the week this week, and thank you for all the work that you've done. Thank you to the technical team. Everything has run smoothly, excellent, and we look forward to meeting you all sometime soon, either in a committee or meeting to have a chat. So thank you very much for all the contributions. That's the end of the meeting, and I propose now that we resolve to exclude the press and public in order to go into a private session in line with 1960 legislation for public bodies, section 1, brackets 2. Is everybody happy to support that? Thank you very much.